Hello there, my name's Card, and this is the first attempt of mine to practice live streaming. If you're watching this, you're almost certainly already familiar with either the scripted video essay content I've been making for a while now, and or the Dog Whistles 101 short film series I also do. So I won't get too hung up on introducing myself, but I will explain what I'm going to try and do today. I have just a handful of notes on the teleprompter computer in front of me to help structure what I'm going to try to talk through today. But by and large, I want this to be practice at speaking extemporaneously at length. The reason I wanted to do this was primarily that I just want to get better at speaking off the cuff, and I think the best way to try and do that is simply to brute force your way through trying it until you're confident. That's my attitude to learning skills in life generally, and I think it serves me fairly well. If you look at the older videos on my YouTube page, I think there's a marked difference in how much less confident I was even a year ago compared to now. I've learned how to work a bunch of editing software and such through doing this, doing cuts, doing audio levels, doing picture-in-picture. That's all just good little things to know that I wouldn't otherwise have ever figured out if I didn't have the excuse of trying to make YouTube videos. So that is my approach to life with a lot of things, especially creative stuff, and I find it can be fun if you come into it with a positive attitude. Same with everything I've done before I tried YouTube, with painting or sewing or sculpting. I just get the materials and try to have fun with it. Zero professional, real technical background. I'll just hope to intuit how to do it, and eventually, hopefully, I'll figure out what I'm doing. So, first things first, I'm going to try and fill up, hopefully, an hour today. If you're ever watching this, when I upload it in the near future, and it's not quite an hour, it is what it is. But I am going to try and speak extemporaneously as best I can today. I see I've got some topics to talk about lined up. I've got some questions from people that have responded to my post saying I'd be attempting a live stream. I've got some plans for the future I want to talk about, and a couple little things I'd like to eventually get around to asking the audience to help me with today. So, I'll try and minimize dead air, but the way I see it, if this first attempt at a live stream comes out subpar, that's okay, because it just gives me more areas I can recognize as things to work on, and I'll just keep trying. And eventually, maybe dozens of these into the future, we'll look back and see how far I've come. So, with that in mind, I wanted to talk for a little bit, as I started to at the outset there, about how even though I can sort of feel myself freezing up and being a little bit unsure of what to say without a complete script in front of me, I do have some pointers. And what I'm reminded most of is the website I made around about the same time I started doing YouTube. Because at the outset, I had absolutely no idea how to make a website. There was completely arcane knowledge to me. I barely understood how they worked or how they got online. But then, at one point while I was in uni, I had an introductory course that was helping me with, as part of a broader archaeology type sub-course for the history degrees I did. We had a couple classes on how to do digital data, and that sort of introduced me to the concept of HTML and how to write those sorts of files that become websites when you put them online. So even though I went into that class not knowing anything at all, I just sort of stuck with it, and eventually I produced all the materials that I was required to for that course, and over the course of like 12 weeks, I was able to look back and think I'd come so far with that. So that's what sort of gave me the impetus to make my own website, and I found that experience quite fun. I sort of learned how to do the background color, to do the text color, make the text big, sort of do the split layout if you've seen it. I based a lot of that off of the. If you have happened to seen my website, you may recognize that it looks a lot like the MIT Classics website, which is a website I've had to look at a lot through uni and through my work in historical research that I think looks quite nice with that simple sort of beige and maroon color scheme. And I think that's just a good look. I know it's not what most of the internet looks like nowadays, and I know it's not what most people would probably think looks cutting edge, but I like it. So I learned how to make it, and I made it for my own satisfaction, and I thought it ended up looking pretty good. And then I did a couple other pages on my website, one where I've got the novella People Mover, as well as a page where I've got the some more words or some new words piece I did that I'll talk about a bit more later in this live stream as well. And that's just sort of my attitude towards creating anything. I think your first one will never be good. I don't expect this live stream, which will become a video in the future, I don't think that'll be particularly good now. But without this bad live stream, there will never be good ones in the future. Not that I'll make, at least. So you have to sort of struggle through it. You have to suffer through the unease and the feeling awkward, in order that eventually someday, hopefully, you get better at speaking fluidly and off the cuff, and you feel a bit more confident with that. And that's sort of the attitude I sort of developed when I was doing sort of small town local journalism through like the last couple of years of high school, through uni, and I ended up getting some good positions off that, doing some pieces that I ended up being paid for pretty good, just like essentially gig work. But I could only get to that point where I was writing articles easily and at a professional level by having several years of doing small potatoes hometown journalism, that sort of stuff. So I think you have to struggle through it. And I don't let that awkwardness stop me from practicing. I've got a lot of things. I want to do a lot of creative projects this year, and I think it'll involve a lot of that. I want to, should I have the time, I want to make more videos. I'd like to sort of explore new concepts and new sort of media in my videos. I'd like to, at some point this year, I'm really interested in making some sort of computer game, and I'd like to learn how to do that, because at the moment I have a lot of ideas that I would love to see realized, but that is as arcane and eldritch of a process as making a website, even just a simple few pages website would have been for me several years ago. So, I think, as much as I have absolutely no knowledge of how to make a game now, I'm hoping that, come November, December this year, I might have made one. I might have made a few, potentially. You just have to sort of take a swing at it, and hopefully eventually you get there. That's sort of how I've worked in sort of every sort of like artistic medium I've ever just had fun playing with. I've done a bit of art, like professionally, where I've been contracted or commissioned to do art for like serious groups that have wanted some sort of decoration, whether they just say you know, here's a general idea, have fun with it, or they've asked for something specific and I've been able to deliver on that. And the way I got to that point was just, you know, years prior, I'd get a bunch of cheap acrylic paint out and some paper or some cheap canvas and some basic brushes, and I just have fun with it. You know, you get a feel for it. You start to sort of get more confident with that, and then in no time at all, shortly thereafter, eventually you get known as like the painter of your friends group. You just sort of accidentally fall into that sort of label by just having fun and experimenting with the medium. And at this point, I'm currently scripting a proper video that's all about my experiences working, sort of doing, sort of working on and off and doing some gig work as an artist, and I'm scripting a video that's sort of offering my experience with that and giving a serious view into sort of how anyone can sort of learn to pursue that as you know, a form of income. I'm scripting that, and that's an experience that I've come to only through just purely self-taught, purely just brute forcing my way into trying. Same with anything, same with music. From a young age, I was I never learnt like musical notation, never really got big into learning music theory, but there are a lot of musical instruments in the house. Growing up, I was very lucky in that regard. You know, piano especially. Got access to a piano now. Got several electronic keyboards, and that's something that just for you know, maybe like 15 years now, I've just been, you know, every other day I'm basically just having fun with a keyboard for like half an hour, you eventually just learn what sounds all the keys make. Eventually you can play a few songs by ear, and then you just sort of start to get an intuitive understanding of how music is made. If you you know, at no point did I ever learn like what all these you know, chords and such were when I was just practicing as a kid. But at some point you eventually learn that if you like you know, press this key and one key that's like two spaces over or 5 spaces over at the same time, it like sounds good. So you just sort of intuit that, and you have fun in the process, and eventually you almost kind of seem like you know what you're doing. And that is basically my attitude towards having fun with anything in life. I made a brief note in my teleprompter here that I was watching the most recent or second most recent Dan Olsen video the other day. I was watching it for the first time, and he was having this big introspective video about having watched The Angry Video Game Nerd for years and years, and he sort of used that as a springboard to talk about his own creative process. And the phrase from that, which has gotten stuck in my head since, is bespoke inefficiencies. And I completely get that. I get that in a big way, but in a very meaningful way. I think all the bespoke inefficiencies are often the soul of a production, and therefore the soul of the output product. But I resonate with that, and I think that was a very apt and accurate insight that Olsen provided, and that sort of stuck in my head. I'll talk about some of my plans for my YouTube page in the future. Ever since the new year, once sort of I stopped recording new stuff in like July or August last year, and had 100 of those Dog Whistles 101s banked up that I released whenever I felt like it over the sort of last quarter of last year. Then around December, just before Christmas, I think I did a new channel trailer plus 6 video essays, and then the announcement that I'd do more Dog Whistles 101s. And I had those done just before the new year, released those in the first fortnight of this year. And ever since I've been alternating dog whistles and video essays, I think that's going to be my plan going forward, at least for the time being. My sort of work and other life commitments sort of give me plenty of time to script more video essays, and I'll just sort of space them out with dog whistles content that's a lot easier to make, so I've made some of that in advance. As much as I do have the intent to get through a very decent quantity of dog whistles 101s this year, I have decided to sort of space them out with the video essays and vice versa. Because one, I do like doing the video essays. I've got a lot of ideas to express and they're fun to do, and some of those are more sort of spur of the moment things. Like when I did the pirate software video, I only did that I only scripted that like half a day in advance of putting it up. Unlike most of the stuff I do, which are ideas I've been hanging on to for quite a while. But also realistically, I see the by and large the miscellaneous video essays are sort of the big tentpole sort of view getters, and that draws viewers in, and that draws new subscribers and people that will stick around and watch the rest of the stuff, including the dog whistles. Because I don't see YouTube as a career, and I don't want it to be ever really. I just see it as a hobby and a game, a very non-serious game. But as with any game, you want to do well and you want to win. So that's why I think it's not hypocritical to say, yes, I do want more views and more subscribers. I want to do well at this game I'm playing. And later on in the year, as I mentioned, I'd like to make a real game. I've got a handful of ideas for that. I won't get too into it, but I've got a few ideas. I won't say more at the current moment, but I also have the some new words project on my website, which is a big page, sort of a dictionary of new words I've invented that I'm using to describe concepts I see around me, or I've witnessed or experienced, or I believe I can articulate, but which don't already have a word for. And that's something I like to do, and I'd like to take say a handful of those and turn that in. I'd like to take a handful of those some new words and turn that into like a short video sort of mini series as well. I'd like to do that this year. No big plans exactly as to when. Haven't started putting together anything for that specific for a video format, but I figure since I've gotten most of it, I've gotten all of it sort of written already, it's on my website, I'd like to do that. I've been, if you're a really avid watcher of mine, you may have noticed I've been practicing sort of getting a handle on what the shorts videos are like. I've been sort of practicing sort of cutting up a few things of mine to sort of fit that format, both in the sense you have to trim a sort of whole video, a whole sort of concept down to like sub 3 minutes, and then also make it fit that particular aspect ratio. It's like the really skinny sort of vertical sort of phone size. Been practicing with that. Would like to do more with that. Don't have any immediate plans for that, but I would like to. The Simpsons hit and run video I did recently, I'd really like to figure out a way to make that smoothly transition into a shorts video. One, because I think it's a good idea that people would enjoy seeing. Two, I think it's a video concept that could be translated well to like a 60-second thing. Plus, like I said, I think it would do well. It'd be nice if a lot of people came and found my channel through seeing that sort of thing. But I just not exactly sure how I would best do it at the moment. I'd have to sort of rejigger the in-game footage I used for that. Probably just re-record, trying to re-script all the original dialogue from that video and just try and make it fit as short a video as I could. Last year, one of the last things I made last year that ended up becoming one of the last few non-dog whistles videos I did was the People Mover novella audiobook, and that came out to like 3.5 hours. I'm really glad I got that made. That was a good experience. That was like the first time since sort of doing YouTube as like a semi-seriously as a hobby that I've gotten anyone else to like help me with a thing, because I got a internet friend of mine who's also done a lot of writing in that same sort of online circles that I've been in, who also, you know, does a lot of good voice work. Reached out to them, and they were more than happy to help, and I insisted on giving them some compensation for that. I'm very glad they were eager to take that. I just loved seeing that novella sort of realized in an audiobook. One, just, you know, I like seeing that made. I like seeing that created, if only for the sake of making it. But you know, it's got like a few hundred views, not a heap. But if you know, if 100 people listen to that in its entirety, I hope they enjoyed it. I hope they got something out of it. It was a lot of hard work to do that. I had to I was a bit crunched on time that time of year. Had a lot of projects up in the air, so I ended up needing to basically, I pulled up the most recent version of that novella that was from like 2019, and I sort of rewrote it all. If not like a page one whole rewrite, it was like chapter by chapter, like heavy editing. Fixed it up, made sure there were no typos in there. With the PDF version that's now also on the website as an accompaniment to the audiobook video. But then I had to make a second version of that script for my voice actor, where I'd basically just like, I'd have sort of bracketed parentheses with like voice acting directions, or the occasional writing something phonetically, because there's a lot of like Native American and Native Canadian like place names in there that I just didn't think you'd necessarily know how to say. So just for ease of that, I made sure there's nothing in there that was like weirdly ambiguous. There are no sort of phrases that were getting given grief. But I like doing that. I like doing, you know, I just liked adapting this book that I'd been sitting on for years and years. And, you know, I think being able to write that novella, similarly to what I was sort of saying at the start of the stream, being able to write a novella that's, you know, several tens of thousands of words long, it was like 90 pages or something, but that was the culmination of just, you know, years of trying my best, experimenting with like short fiction that's like 10 pages at most. And excuse me, that's the culmination of experimenting with fiction that's like 10 pages at most, probably closer to 5 in most cases. And I knew as I was writing that most of that fiction was bad, but, you know, you sort of power through writing badly, and eventually you get something that's, you know, a bit better. You grind up those skills. And you know, and being able to sort of go back to that novella and like re-script it recently, you know, maybe that'll get me over the hurdle of doing another novella at some point in the future, if I get a good idea and I'm feeling it. And then, you know, if you do that enough, maybe you'll get a proper full-length novel that people be interested in, or best case scenario, you trick some publisher into buying the rights for it or something. But I'd like to do more with that. Ever since I wrote it originally, I've always loved the idea of doing it as like a short film or a stage play. For a while, I was very, very, very close to giving it a go as a short film. I was working for quite a while as part of this like indie sort of whole indie sort of film production thing I was with for a while. I was mainly doing like prop making work, but since it was just such a small crew, and everyone was also friends and knew one another, we were getting paid. It was a professional thing, and it had like actual finances behind it. But it was with a group of people who were all friendly with one another and who had experience working in like a community theater and such. I was with that mainly doing mainly making props, making like set stuff, but because it was such a small crew, so I got exposure to learning how like the cameras and photography stuff sort of worked, and I was really, really close to sort of pitching either pitching for this group I was with, help me make this, or I'll just obtain some cameras and go off and do it on my own. Because it's People Mover as a story, you would only really need one or maybe two main actors, and the rest of it would be bit parts given the nature of the story. And I feel like I could have, but I ended up sort of passing over the chance to do that while I had the opportunity, because I basically had some other big project come up, and then that sort of overlapped with picking up some more actual serious work, and I don't think I'm necessarily in a position to just be able to like pick up a camera any day right now and do it now, but someday I'd like to, get it put at least a like spec script together for it as a short film or as a play, like I said, and just sort of work out some of the logistics involved, like how long, if I sort of break this down instead of a 20 chapter novella, if I sort of look at it as like probably 20 scenes, how long would it be if I sort of think about, all right, if this was all playing out in real time, how long would it be? How many different locations are there? How much of this is like set in the cab of a truck? How much of it is set in like a small office that I could easily, set up just, in any like corporate office? How much of it is just like walking along the street with dialogue? What would the actual logistics of making this be? I'd do all that serious sort of research and paperwork and homework before I tried doing it, but I'd definitely be open to doing it for real. That's about all I can think of off the top of my head for creative plans for the future, I think. At least for sort of adapting pre-existing works. I'm already 28 something minutes in. Hoping to fill out an hour as practice today. I've got some questions lined up that people have asked me from when I announced I'd be doing the stream, and solicited questions and comments to respond to. I'll just jump into these. I've got them written down, but I don't have any notes for how to answer them. But I'll just have a go at answering some of these extemporaneously. Alright, one commenter asks, why do you believe that simply knowing or using a dog whistle should warrant immediate removal from the community for bad vibes, when many of these symbols also originate as old internet memes that normal people can adopt and use for humorous purposes? And another commenter similarly asks, why do you explain actual dog whistles and random 4chan memes in your videos without making any difference between them and presenting them as they are on the same level? Old 4chan memes that have since spread to mainstream platforms with people using them without any intentions are not a dog whistle. The best example for this is the Bond Burger meme. I've seen it multiple times on big meme channels here with hundreds of people discussing it in the comments. You cannot seriously claim all these people are just using it as a dog whistle. Just calling everything a dog whistle isn't the way to go. I'll answer those together. That's why I sort of read them together when I could see them out of the corner of my eye. I see a lot of variations on this. Is something that gets commented quite regularly by sort of well-meaning people, probably people seeing one of my dog whistle videos for the first time. And my simple answer would be, realistically, like 99% of the time, when you see someone invoking these memes or like spamming them in the comment sections under my videos, for instance, 99% of the time you can be certain that is just like low effort image board troll. That is all who is commenting Sneed or doing low effort Holocaust jokes or commenting something about have you had breakfast yesterday. That's basically the fact of the matter. Yes, some of them, like the Bonderburger thing, or maybe the Scub meme, do have some overlap or do have some like adoption within like non-image board communities. Like these things will start on 4chan or 8chan or something awful, and then they'll make their way to Twitter or Reddit, or another website that's another layer down the food chain. Realistically, I have a sort of concept in my head where my videos, the Dog Whistles 101 videos, are reductive to a particular, are reductive and simplistic. And I do that very much on purpose, and I've been doing that on purpose since day one. Because a lot of this stuff is just completely foreign to a lot of people who want to learn it. There's a lot of people who consider themselves good lefties and good liberals who don't want image board trolls and chuds spamming up their online spaces, and they want to learn all these memes, so that when they see someone spamming something, when they see someone or a group of people making these jokes and just sort of wasting everyone's time, they want to be able to know quickly that, yeah, it's just a 4chan thing, you can write it off completely. That's what people want to hear, and that's what people are sort of looking for a source on. And more often than not, it's just more effective to just say, yep, that's a 4chan thing, don't worry about it, just ignore it, or block it, or just scroll past it, don't engage with it. It's just more simple to say it's a 4chan thing. If I sort of look at a list of the Dog Whistles 101s I've done, a lot of the things like Alberto Barbosa or Ack or Anne Frank's pen, Austrian painter references, Bane references, Bix Nude, Blue Eisenhower November, Chimpanzee Feed, Cinema Falcons, Clapperboards, Clowns, Crab's Legs, Deans, Hot Pockets, Grinch in a Mask, Kazakhstan, Indoor Farmer, Janny's, Lovecraft's Cat, Architect, Frembo. A lot of these are just really low effort 4chan things. But what a lot of people who are going to be watching this as like my sort of closest sincere followers, in as much as I have any of those, and the people who will be watching this who have very little in line with my politics or my personal social preferences, but are just watching this because they are, for lack of a better term, Kiwi Farms brained trolls. Those people do not realize how foreign all of this stuff is to the median internet user, let alone the median person. if you think of it as like, you know, one layer down the food chain from 4chan image board knowledge is like the otherwise internet savvy, tech savvy Redditor, and then they will not know most of this stuff. And then like one layer down from them is like the Facebook boomer. They will not know most of what the Redditor level knows. And then there's just a lot more people that are like sub like MAGA reactionary Facebook boomer in terms of knowing what this is. That's a lot of people who don't know any of this stuff, but they still inexplicably find their way online. They use YouTube. That's a big website that, you know, one of the biggest in the world, you know, apart from like Wikipedia or like the Google search bar itself. They come on, they see this 4chan meme stuff. They just want someone to tell them where it's from. You know, like, what is this? Is this 4chan? Is it bad? Yes, to both. But that's what people need to hear. And it's more efficient to just be reductive and simplistic with them to that extent. Sort of the one, like, because realistically, it's a better outcome like that. And sort of this I actually get a lot of emails at the email address listed in the description of every video, and it's from people who identify themselves as like long-time image board types who recognize most, if not all, of everything I've ever done a dog whistles video on. And they say something like, you can't be serious, this doesn't need explaining. And I recall getting a handful of these when I did the Dog Whistles 101 on Leaf. Leaf as a term used to identify Canadians. And in that Dog Whistles 101 video, I talked about how this is, you know, this is a term that's used primarily on 4chan, a lot of other image boards like 2cha, CroutChan, WizardChan, 420chan, etc. It's sort of common image board slang. And I talked about how A, if people use this term, you know they're from an image board. B, they're often using like Canadian or Leaf as a substitute for an actual different ethnic or national group that they have a grievance with, but they just they don't want to like say how much they don't like Africans or Indians or whatever, so because they don't want to get banned. So they say, oh, you know, I hate Canadians, I hate Leafs instead. And then sort of one step beyond that, in sort of the way memes get sort of abstracted, is that became on 4chan that became the rake, R-A-K-E joke, sort of day of the rake up all the leaves, etc., etc. If you're a 4chan user on pretty much any board and you see someone respond to you know, another comment with just a picture of a rake, you sort of understand, you know, with very minimal image board experience, you'll understand that the implication of that is you're saying the other person's, the person you're responding to's post is bad, and you're using this jokey way of saying it's so bad we can tell you're Canadian, and the correct thing to do to Canadians, to Leafs, is to rake them up, because, you know, that's how you dispose of leaves, is you rake them up. And so this is where you get the phrases like day of the rake from. And sort of tying back to what I started this digression with, I got an email from someone saying you can't seriously think someone would need day of the rake explained to them. And what I immediately thought seeing that, and what I believe I responded with, is you do not realize how unnormal it is to understand what day of the rake means. For starters, you have to go through like that whole 4chan unspoken onboarding of the knowledge that, you know, Canadian means Leaf, Leaf means Canadian, but it's also a stand-in for other groups, and it's also derogatory. But you also need to know, as an extension of this, you need to know it's a reference to this like really like the day of prefix. That's a reference to this like book written by actual neo-Nazis that is only read and enjoyed and sort of a talking point of actual Nazis. And you have to know that within the book, Day of the Rope means hang all the journalists and race traders or whatever. So then you have to sort of make like 2 or 3 leaps of knowledge that is really obscure to most people, and they'd be completely disinterested in learning about it, because essentially the only non-image board, non-Nazi people who learn stuff like that are all the like the intersection of like serious lefty and willing to go on the image board for observation and research and having fun purposes. And that's a very small intersection. There are very few even remotely normal people who would intuit the meaning of Day of the Rake. And so to explain all this in full to one person one time is such a needlessly complicated process. It's just easier at the end of the day to make like a 2 or 3 minute video that says, hello, I'm a long time progressive organizer. Rake is a 4chan thing. It's bad. If you see it, just ignore it, block it, whatever. It's just easier to make that video. It's easier to just be reductive and simplistic. Same with, Sneed is a good example. There's like a whole lore to Sneed that I know because I've just got that first-hand image board experience myself. But I don't want to have to explain that in full to a person, even assuming they could follow along and you're getting everything right. I'd just rather say, it's The Simpsons, it's this thing derived from an episode of The Simpsons, they like spamming it. It's basically a meaningless signifier, except for demonstrating that you're in on the joke. Same with like Bane, same with Penn Jillette, the Penn Jillette meme of into the trash it goes, like that thing. There's like, same with Welch's Jelly Pirates, same with like The Nobody or Blue Eisenhower November, same with Frembo, same with toilet paper rolls, the free toilet paper rolls one I did a video on. These are all like weird, complex memes that have evolved, for lack of a better word, organically on these image board websites, which are by and large anonymous or pseudo-anonymous, and very collective and collaborative in how they produce content. And then there's an element where only stuff that's popular and gets adapted on and becomes sort of easy to reference sort of lasts into the future and becomes well known. Sort of if you look at something like the Daily Dose green and purple thing, that sort of evolved out of Dragon Ball posting when It's Over 9,000 became a meme. And so that spawned a wave of like Dragon Ball theme posting, but also like, most of these image boards start as explicitly places for reference, referencing and talking about like anime and animation and stuff like that. So it's, a natural environment for it. But then people do edits and people do memes and image macros and artwork and music. So that ends up becoming one that lasts. Whereas if you go back to if you had a perfect archive of 4chan and you went back to the same week or the same month or even the same year that Daily Dose emerged, you'd see a bunch of in-jokes that were like flavor of the week that never lasted, that very, very well could have become memes, in an alternate timeline if, a dozen more people started posting it the day of and it became popular and it blew up. It would have stuck around till now, but it just happened not to. Oh, where did I start with all this? Yeah. So point is, the reason I call a lot of stuff dog whistles, and a lot of people ask why do I sort of oversimplify. It's because the average person, the sort of 300 to 700 people that watch each of those dog whistles videos, they don't want or need to know a deep, rich, complex lore as to how a particular joke or meme started. They basically just need to be told, this is a 4chan thing, do what you will with that information. I hope that is enlightening for anyone who asks in the future. It's also worth noting that if you see someone's like Twitter feed or anything similar to that, and if you see like ARPU friend posting stuff, if you see that, if you're sensible and have sort of my background and experience, you can clock that poster's worldview instantly. It's just a vibe they have. I know you're like a reactionary or reactionary leaning, sort of like the irreverent image board jokes. I know what your deal is going to be. You're very unlikely to be anything else than what I immediately intuit you as being. I have some notes here that I wrote down while I was sort of going through this. I've had a thought for a while that maybe calling the series Dog Whistles 101 and calling all these memes dog whistles was maybe a little bit heavy-handed. Because dog whistles usually have a more overt and explicitly political sort of definition when you're talking about dog whistles in classic retail politics. If you look up dog whistles on Wikipedia or in your first year poli-sci textbook, the classic example is everything Lee Atwater did for Nixon and Bush Sr. and Reagan, where he'd say stuff like inner city welfare recipients. It's like, we never said what race they are, yet you can tell somehow. That sort of thing. I stand by referring to a lot of these 4chan memes as dog whistles, because I think if you argue that in the most literal sense they are, because they're a bit of iconography or a bit of terminology that has a specific meaning and a specific implication that most people aren't aware of, but the people saying it are, and the people in the target audience who is potentially viewing it will know, and they'll pick up on it. I had a lot of people, especially sort of early when I started doing Dog Whistles 101, I had people saying stuff like they completely don't understand what a dog whistle is or what is meant by that, especially in this context, where they think I'm saying just a completely they think I'm saying the word, the iconography itself is inherently or explicitly offensive, like when I did milk early on, when I did the OK hand gesture early on. I knew they were basic, I knew they were sort of outdated, but I'm thinking, if I'm going to do this series for potentially hundreds of videos, might as well get all the basic ones out of the way first before I start doing the really obscure, deep 4chan X stuff. But I don't care. I don't care if people incorrectly think I'm saying that that's what the meaning is, that it's inherently or intrinsically offensive just on the face of it. And that was sort of a comment people were leaving a lot when I started doing it, but that is wrong. That is wrong in that regard. And if you want to get a little abstract about it, talking about how the experience I had with the people who were emailing me saying stuff like, this stuff doesn't seem that obscure to me, or my sort of observation leading on from that would be, perhaps these are dog whistles in the purest original sense, in that they're words that words and phrases and so on that express your political worldview without other people knowing. Perhaps you yourself, the person invoking the dog whistle, don't even realize how much you're broadcasting your political leanings by saying this stuff. Because if I see you doing one of these dog whistles that I've covered, or I've got written down on my list to cover, I know what your deal is. Even if you yourself aren't aware that you're making everyone who is in on it aware. It's just a thought. Moving on, someone else asks, why do you allow reactionary trolls to remain in your comment section? It's basically relatively harmless. I think all the it sounds a bit over the top to call them reactionary trolls, but it is accurate to call them that. The comment section of my YouTube videos are a super serious or super important place. Further, if I really wanted to, I could just instantly permaban anyone who commented something that I knew was sus, or I just remove the comments. Theoretically, there would always be new reactionary trolls coming in, and the people who were there, if they were dedicated, could always make alt accounts. Censorship of that sort rarely works perfectly. So it's basically harmless. You know, every dog whistles video I do, I know I'm going to get 50 to 100 comments that are just some variation on Sneed at this point, and I don't care. If the YouTube algorithm is real, and I don't believe in it in the sense most people do, then apparently they would be helping the videos get more visibility. So perhaps there is some hidden upside there. Furthermore, in my notes, I've got someone else asks, how did you become aware of the more niche internet forums / image boards? I started out being aware of most of them. I couldn't even say exactly when. I was like, I want to say I was aware of them probably around like first year of high school, if not slightly earlier, because when I was in school at a decently sized sort of regular friend group, but it was mainly dork nerd types, the sort that would like play like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, sort of in sort of after school, or in any sort of big breaks, or computer nerds that were like, you know, I went to like a small, not that well-funded school, really rural, so the computer lab had like a dozen like, it was Windows Vista or pre-Windows Vista computers when I started at high school there. Sort of big, chunky cases, and there was like a lot of my friends were like computer hardware nerd types that were sort of hobbyists who sort of our science teacher did a lot of the IT stuff, because there wasn't that many faculty members, and they were sort of, he was sort of friendly, you know, he was friendly with all the, you know, few dozen students that were there on any given day, so that often just really enthusiastically like help out with like setting up these big chunky computers. That was sort of the friend group I had, and it was I was in this friend group. There were like it was me, a few people from sort of my year, a few people from the year below me, and then a few people each from like the next year above, and the next year above, and the next year above that. Um, um, and um, it was a very sort of like older brother dynamic for the most part. You know, every week, sort of one of the older boys would pull something up on a computer and be like, "Hey, do you know what this is? Have you seen this? This is an image board. This is a new website, a thing. Here, you're old enough to know what this is now." Um, and I think that's basically um, I was probably just shown like what 4chan was when I was like 12 or 13 or something. Um, and shouldn't have been, but then again, I came out all right. So um, it's like, yeah, first time you go there and the message comes up and says everything here is artistic works of fiction, falsehood. Only a fool would think anything otherwise. Apparently, I'm the only person who's ever taken that message seriously because everyone else believes what they see on poll. Um, but that's just sort of where I sort of got learned image boards, and then from there, I guess I probably just was like, hey, are there more of these? Are there variations? How do I ban evade? I need I need a schoolmate who's a few years older than me teaching me how to ban evade on 4chan. That's basically how I got aware of forums and image boards. The rest. Because we didn't have like internet at home until I was like 15 or 16. So I think I was just at school, where I where I was shown 4chan and shown Reddit and shown probably something awful and all these other ones like that. Another question. I see we've got about 57 minutes and still got a few things to talk about. So we're going good on time, even if I have been a bit awkward and uneasy, but we're doing good on time. Question here. Did your political journey involve being introduced to ideas and themes on forums that you moved away from? Maybe a simpler way to ask is just what activated you into engaging with politics, local and otherwise? Was it influenced by anything in particular? I started out, I read a lot as a kid and as a teenager, especially history. I probably, some other stream, I could tell the big long story about how I got so into history from a young age, but got into history, just had like a vague interest in political stuff and just like learning what was out there. Sort of growing up, my parents were never sort of overtly political in a big way, in terms of like talking about like political campaigns, but my mum was and still is like big into unions, like workers unions. It's just like I was aware of the concept of a union. In this case, originally like the nurses and midwives union. I was like aware of the concept of a union from like, I don't know, first grade or something. It just like it was just explained to me like, it was just explained to me as like a little kid. Hey, when you're at a job, you have to negotiate with your boss for like pay and conditions. Hey, if everyone who worked there did it at once, it'd be easier, wouldn't it? Yeah, that makes sense to me. Uh, then when I was I was like always like union conscious and union positive from very young age, and then growing up where I did in rural New South Wales when I was a kid, it feels like that was when there was this big movement around here. It was called Shut the Gate or Lock the Gate. And what you'd see that was a bunch of, they were like yellow or green triangular signs, I think, that like you would see on like every gate, every gate out here in the countryside, like every every farmer, every tree growing person, every like a lot of dairy farmers, sheep farmers, a couple of alpaca farmers, just every a lot of farmland out here, and like every farm you'd see that on. And if you sort of got close to the sign, big triangular sign about yay big, it was really visible. If you got close to that, it was a campaign, basically a solidarity campaign. All these farmers would agree to not sell or rent their property to coal seam gas extraction companies, and to resist efforts of local, state, and federal government to do like eminent domain. But when I was like either a young teenager or like an older kid, I was like, hey, what is this? I'm 12, and what is coal seam gas? And like I had that explained to me. That was like a big it's like the first political campaign I ever like encountered. When I was a real little kid, I'd like see the news. I'm conscious of a memory that when I was like a real little kid, the Prime Minister was John Howard, then it was Kevin Rudd, then it was Gillard, then Rudd again, and then Abbott or whoever. And I was like aware of that, but didn't have any particular burning desire to find out what all that was about. I just knew we had changes in leadership every once in a while. Then when I was like an older teenager, like 16, 17, 18, I read. I was just a nerd, so I read a lot, and that included just like a lot of theory, including all the like lefty political theory that people will like brag about having read now. And my takeaway from all that is that it was not at all important, at all. Like I started sort of doing like serious political organizing when I started out in uni, and sort of in the small break I had in between high school and uni. And I got involved with a lot of like sort of like local causes. I should abridge this for now, and I could make it a whole big story for some other practice live stream. But the long and the short of it is, not to sound too like smug or saccharine, but in as much as I had any sort of political view from a young age, I was just like try to be nice to people. Growing up in like a pretty poor and disadvantaged area, my sort of closest thing I had to like an economic view of the world was like, hey, clearly not everyone in this classroom or in this schoolroom has enough like resources. You should want to like make sure everyone has enough. I'm suspicious of anyone hoarding supplies for themselves, and I'm also suspicious of anyone trying to make themselves into a leader by telling people how they should help others. You should just want to help others without needing to be told. And if you in a way, you could extrapolate a through line from that into my politics now, if you really wanted to. But of course, through uni, through the first time I was at uni, and post that, and then second time I was at uni doing my master's degree, through to now, I got more educated on like specific issues, of course, all the modern lefty intersectional classics, all the articulations of systemic injustices and all that, but all the big 100-plus-year-old books that I read for fun at the time turned out to be completely pointless, I find. This is one of the big main reasons that I don't recommend you read any of those political philosophers from like anywhere between the French Revolution and Industrial Revolution. Pointless. You don't everyone on the left venerates Marx, and I get so much shit for this in real life organizing spaces. But the thing I tell to anyone who ever asks me is that, you know, Marx and Engels wrote thousands of pages. Everything of note they ever wrote you could fit on like one piece of A4 paper if you wrote kind of small and neat. You really only need the cliff notes of a lot of lefty theory at most. And a lot of stuff in it. A lot of stuff in Marx is just wrong. I will elaborate on this at some point in the future. I'll wrap it up now since we're 1 hour, 6 minutes in currently. A few notes here. I've got a typeface, like a font that I wrote up that I was using for personal projects for a while. I'd like to release that publicly eventually. I've got some notes here about how, you know, sort of a year into doing YouTube as a hobby, I feel like I'm decent at reading scripts. But you know, like I think about 2 weeks ago now, I did that call with Queeman after I did that video talking about how he's got some stuff that kind of looks like sus takes if you look at them from the right angle. And I had that call, and when I did that call, I basically had like a page of sort of basic talking points and notes I wanted to talk to him about. And I think if you listen to the audio of that call, which is up in its entirety on my page, and you can probably find it on his as well, that's like the first time I've ever had a live call with someone in what is having even something that's even close to an argument. And I felt like you know, the thing Eisenhower said about everyone has a plan right up until contact with the enemy. Queeman was barely pushing back on what I was saying, but I was still just absolutely floundering trying to articulate the points I wanted to in order. I really need to try and get better at doing that, although I'm glad we were able to sort of wrap that up in like 20 minutes or less without any serious dramatic argument breaking out. I need to get better at doing live stuff, much like I need to get better at doing this live stream now. Also in my notes I've got something about how I get so many comparisons to the new Joker. I don't see it. The reason I used to get a lot of comparisons to Doctor Who, mainly because a few years ago I would usually wear at the very least whenever I went out I'd wear like button-up shirt and like a blazer and or a waistcoat, and I usually had a lot of like brightly coloured and brightly patterned waistcoats that I made, and a lot of colourful ties and stuff that I'd either been given or collected or made, sort of neckties, and I used to get a lot of comparisons to Doctor Who. For a while, yeah, it was all I got, and then ever since I started doing YouTube, then I was getting Joker comparisons. I think, is it like the red jumpers? I started out just wearing, I think when I started out doing YouTube in like the earliest videos, I had no idea what to wear exactly. I didn't know sort of how professional to try and look, so I was just wearing like button-up shirts. Then a couple of videos in, for the sake of privacy and quiet, and when I've got time free, pretty much like 99% of everything I've ever filmed for my YouTube page has happened at like between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning. Um, uh, so I just started wearing jumpers because it was like cold at the time. It's cold in the middle of the night. And then when the weather sort of got warm, and I started doing a lot of these closer to like 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. I think I just kept the jumpers because it's what I'd been wearing. It's what people were expecting. That's about all there is to that. One other thing I've got in my notes. If you've watched this far into the live stream, you're definitely my strongest soldiers. So I have a job for someone out there who I know will be able to help me with this, who sees this. I would really like someone to help me locate this Gamergate era 4chan comic. I just, at the time of recording, I've basically just done that that Vivian James video. That's my most recent one. I'm like a few days or maybe a week away from that now. I've been thinking about hot Gamergate takes to have now 11 years later. And there's this comic I'd really like to analyze for a video. And the theme of this comic is sort of like, it's from the perspective of people who supposedly get their hobbies invaded. It's very simple. It's like MS Paint level. It's white background. First panel is like a couple stick figures playing a trading card game or similar. Second panel is another person shows up asking how to play, and they like get integrated into the group. The next panel is someone else shows up who wants to play, who wants to alter the rules. And there's like another panel showing like jocks and girls and people taking it seriously showing up. And then the original two stick figures leave and like swear to make their own game space. I know someone watching this will know what comic I'm talking about. Can someone please either send me that or just post it somewhere? I'll see it. It was very popular on 4chan like a decade ago, and like 4chan adjacent or 4chan flavored parts of Twitter nowadays. I saw it posted recently, and I either forgot to save it, neglected to save it, or I did save it and it's just been saved to who knows where, and I can't find it now. But I really want to analyze that comic and sort of the mindset behind it specifically, and if someone could send me that, I'd really appreciate it. That's basically the last thing I've got to do. I've got a few more things in my notes. I didn't know how stretched for time I would be. I was anticipating that I might struggle to reach like even half an hour. But so the last thing I've got in my notes here is the process behind any of those video essays I make. Most of the video topics is something I've been thinking about for a long while. And what I do is I've got one notepad file on my computer, just on the desktop, just like ideas, just titled ideas. And every time I get an idea, I just sort of open that up, type in like a one-line premise for a video, repeat. And I copied a few of those into my teleprompter notes for today. So just tell me if you've made it this far into the live stream or into the video when it gets posted. Tell me what you think of any of these premises. And if people sound excited, I will prioritize doing that one. I've got first one here. What will the next moral panic be? Because I think it's going to be animal vaccinations, in the sort of same vein that like 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, there was a lot of hubbub on like the crunchy right-wing type people who were like all alarmist about genetically modified plants. I think we're due for a moral panic about how people vaccinate animals. Um, that's just an idea. I've got. I want to do a video about the history of the Wingdings font, why it was made, what the actual purpose of it is, because it has a purpose. People think it's just like the funny symbols font, but it has a purpose, and it's not. When I talk to some people about this, they assume it's like an alternative for emoticons or ASCII art or anything like that, but that's not why Wingdings was invented, and I would like to educate the world about why that is. Around September last year, I was rereading The Lord of the Rings, and that gave me a lot of ideas for videos I want to make. One thing I'd like to do is a video on Tolkien and allegory, and if you're a book nerd, you already know what Tolkien's thoughts about allegory were, but I want to sort of thread that needle with a sort of pro-death of the author mindset. I want to do, I could do like a video. I've got one line here in my notes is Gandalf the White and Gandalf the Grey two separate people? I think it is, and I'd like to make a article from the literature that they are. Does the Balrog have wings? If you're a big Tolkien nerd, you'll know the import of that question, and my answer is yes. For like serious political content, I'd like to just make some quick videos just like explaining how to articulate lefty political points that are often people sort of they trip over themselves or get called out on or get sort of used as like gotcha bait. I'd like to make videos explaining the argument that's pro-immigration while still being pro-labor and pro-workforce. I'd like to make a video explaining why, in my view, there's no such thing as eco-fascism, as in a self-conscious, like fascist, sort of ultra-conservative, xenophobic, reactionary movement that is sincerely pro-environment. I think that is not a thing. I'd like to do a video about can you enjoy problematic media? What sort of my opinion on that is, what my view to that is, under what circumstances, and when it does and doesn't support the author, and should that be a concern, that sort of thing. I've got a line in my notes here that's just, how bad should you feel about being a first worlder? What would a leftist Andrew Tate even look like? Stuff like that. What would Abe Lincoln's position on Israel-Palestine be? Are police body cams actually bad? That was a big discussion around, like every time BLM comes up in the news, people talk about police body cams. I think it's far from like a perfect solution. For one thing, it's an inherently a reformist approach, not a police reductionist or police eliminationist approach. On like a technical, logistical level, if you're a lib, you could say stuff like it's too much of a hassle to need to store large quantities of data and footage. But my personal angle is, when this comes up in like conversation among sort of lefty friends of mine say, they say correctly and accurately, data storage doesn't have to be a problem if you commit the resources to it. And there's also a very sensible argument that I do respect, and do often respect the people making, that say you don't have to be completely here and now police, get rid of all police right now. You don't have to do that completely. It's okay to advocate ongoing reform now with the hopes or the aims that you eventually get down the line to a more far left solution. But what people who I do a lot of political organizing with, and people who do political organizing generally often have this view that I also my actual view is that I have in real life is that you should be more focused on actual real material outcomes in the here and now. So a lot of people suggest that police body cams are a good thing to push for here and now because it is good at like improving oversight and accountability, and so on and so forth. But what I would sort of push back on that slightly. The main argument for that is if you take the view that that police body cam footage is like a public resource, which is publicly accessible, anyone can sort of request, and cops are supposed to always be filming. They can't just film at will or turn it off whenever they want, because that would defeat the whole purpose of having the body cams. My suggestion is that I think it's in a way like a violation of a lot of people's privacy if every cop is now a camera anyone can request the footage of, because in order for there to be accountability in like someone who's more left than just a tepid lib would want, you would need to have that footage be requestable to any member of the public. And if I was someone, say I was like in a police interrogation room because I was like the victim of an assault or some like serious traumatic thing, and I like have to tell the cop about this like harrowing incident. With the way a lot of like victims, especially of like gendered and sexual violence, are often like antagonized if they ever become publicly known, I wouldn't want like any online troll, any antagonist, any real bad guy, any real reactionary agitator to have complete legal freedom to access footage of me talking about possibly the most harrowing thing that's ever happened to me. That's just one view I have that I think is something at least worth serious consideration of. Yeah. There are no perfect solutions to that topic at the moment, I think. Similarly, I've got another line in my notes here for a video idea. Under what circumstances should a leftist call the cops? I've got some thoughts on that. One idea for a video is, are scams real labor? I've got a line in my notes here. H-Bomber Guy's Flat Earth video was pretty bad, actually. I won't elaborate on what I mean by that now, but I'd really love to do. I guess I was going through all the H-Bomber Guy back catalogue a while ago now, and just thinking that I have significant disagreements with a lot of these. The Flat Earth video is the one that stuck out to me the most. Obviously, I don't mean to contend that the Earth is flat. I just think the way H-Bomber Guy argues it, and the way he's sort of presenting this for an audience, is actually subpar. And I'd like to talk about why I think that is at some point in a video. More Tolkien hot takes. I think always evil races in fantasy fiction are cool and good, actually. I'd like to do just like opinion piece videos, the solution to the trolley problem and why. Just like simple explainer videos for the difference between horror and terror, or the difference between sympathy and empathy. I'd like to do a video on what happens if you don't vote in Australia, because it's not what a lot of Australians think happens. I'd like to give a first-hand account as to what happens and what shows up at your house. I want to do a video on I've got a couple ideas for a video on the movie 300. Just a bunch of other video topics here, but I won't talk too much about them at the moment. I'll talk about them in another video, perhaps the next one. I've got all these ideas written down. I'd just love to be able to get around to doing them at some point. So I've got some notes for how to wrap this up. We're at 1 hour 24 now. That is more than I anticipated being able to go for when I started, and before I started, I had no great plans. But if all goes well, you'll see this live stream recorded, uploaded as a video in the near future. If you're seeing it, it must have gone well enough for me to want to post it, and even though I was really awkward and there's some dead air and some nervousness and some unpreparedness in there at times, I think this has gone well enough for me to want to post it and get feedback. Leave all your comments and your questions below this video when it gets uploaded. I'll read those all, and I'll get around to answering all of those that are worth answering next time. I really would welcome a lot of people asking things for next time, and next live stream I try may very well just be me with a list of questions trying to talk about them extemporaneously, just so I get some more practice with this format that I'd like to do and like to get better at as I sort of go forward. I will get around to those next time. As for now, I think I will wrap this up here. Thank you for watching this, either live or if you happen to watch it when it's uploaded and you end up watching it in full. Thank you for that. Thank you for all the feedback that I'm sure you'll leave if you want to underneath this video. Thank you for all your questions. I will wrap this up here now. Until you next hear from me, have a lovely day and stay safe.